Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Stark Reality. The topic for today is going to be twin flame triggers. Triggers is an integral part of the journey. It is 99% of the journey up until you get into union. It has to be this way, and you're not only triggered from this life, but you're triggered from past lives as well. And I didn't realize this. It's only by experience that I understand that past lives play a huge part, because what will happen is we will bring things over, fears and insecurities, stuff that has happened in our past lives that we just emotionally cannot let go of. We bring into this life and we have to deal with that. On top of all the shit in this life, we have to deal with stuff in that life. For example, I have had past lives as a sailor. I've lived in the Wild West. I've had lives as a tribal. I lived in the 1950s. Um, a lot more than that, but those are the ones that have been brought to my attention. Those are the lives where I have held on to something emotionally and I've brought it over, and it's stunted my spiritual growth. So, not all triggers are based in this life, which makes it very, very confusing, because a lot of the time when you're sitting there and you feel crappy in your heart chakra and you sit down and you cry and you cry and you cry and you cry, most of the time you actually don't know what you're crying about, which makes everything so confusing. You never know what you're healing unless you're told, which is like almost none of the time. It's like, oh, what fear am I? Am I healing rejection? Am I healing envy? Am I healing jealousy? You don't know. And that's the whole thing in this journey, is about trust, because you have no idea why you're crying. You have no idea why you woke up in the morning, you feel good, and suddenly you feel shit, and suddenly you feel sad, and suddenly you feel like you want to cry, or you want to punch something, or you feel angry. And it's not coming from your twin, that comes later. It's the triggers coming up to heal you. Um, and it's distressing because it is so confusing. You're literally sitting there blubbering away going, why am I crying? I don't know why I'm crying now. Do you feel better afterwards? Yeah, you do. It's like you're like, oh man, I feel so much better. It feels like something is lifted. It feels like you've cleansed something. It just feels a little, every time you do that, every time you purge, it feels a little bit better. But most of the time, you won't know what you're purging, let alone if it's from this life or another life, or you have no idea. But when you get triggered, it's very interesting, because I don't think a lot of people understand triggers. They know anger, but they don't understand it's a trigger. So if you're somewhere and someone says something or does something and you get an instant visceral emotional reaction, it's a trigger. And it's triggering something within you that's unhealed. People don't understand this. They think, oh, well, people just get angry at things. No, they don't. They get angry for a reason. But the other confusing thing about the triggers is we don't know what the reason is. We'll sit there, we'll get pissed off, we'll get annoyed, and we'll just stew on it. Something's ever happened to you and you just stew on it and you're like, why can't I let this go? Why am I still angry? Why are all these shit emotions coming up? You never know why, but it's a trigger. And it's annoying because you never know what the trigger is. You don't know. It's not like, oh, I'm obviously triggered because I can't handle this, and I this is my insecurity. No, never happens that way. You just sit there mulling over it, going, I'm so fucking angry at what this person said to me, or I'm so fucking angry at what this person did. You don't know why. It's the most confusing thing. Now, I'm not saying if you're not a twin, you don't get triggered. Yeah, of course you get triggered, but it's not as often. It's the twin flame thing, as I said in my previous podcast episode. It's an accelerated ascension journey. So you will be triggered, 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 triggered. You don't get a break. You don't get a break unless you beg for it, which I did. I begged. I begged my guides. I said, please, I need a break. I can't do this. I'm on the edge. And they gave it to me. They only gave me a few days, but that was enough to kind of clean myself up and get back into it. But it's accelerated. So there'll be trigger after trigger after trigger after trigger. And It'll be everything. Now, I'm not saying you need to get to a point where you're a monk and nothing triggers you, but you do have to get to a point where 99% of things you just accept. They don't trigger you. They don't elicit a negative reaction in you. Yes, you still get annoyed at things. I think people have this misconception that, oh, you have to be, love and light and, namaste and all that. No, because you're still living on earth and there's still going to be things that are going to annoy you. There's still going to be things that are going to piss you off. You're still going to feel angry. You don't get rid of those emotions. The triggering and the healing is to heal a lot of them, most of them. But what it really does is it doesn't stop the emotion of anger or annoyance or irritation. All it does is when you do get angry, when you do get irritated, it comes and it goes. That's it. It comes and it goes. Because now when people get triggered, they sit with it and they dwell on it. And it goes in their head around and around and around, and they overanalyze it and they can't get past it. And so they start snapping at people. And they start avoidance. They start doing things they shouldn't do. They turn to alcohol. They turn to this just because they don't want to feel this shit way anymore. When you reach a point, or you will reach a point in the twin journey where you will get angry and frustrated and all that, like I mentioned, but it'll happen and then you'll let it go. It'll be really, really easy to work through when someone pisses you off, because you're never going to get to the point where people don't piss you off. It's just how you react, how you handle it, and how fast you work through it. That's pretty much all it is. So triggering is absolutely essential on the twin flame journey. We couldn't do it without it. It's accelerated triggering, which is why it seems so much worse. So the amount of triggers that twin flames go through during separation is so hard and fast, and there's so many of them that and this is just my personal belief, I would equate it over a normal person that's not going through the twin flame journey, that's just doing kind of life after life after life and going through lessons and stuff. I would equate all the triggers and all the work we do on the ascension journey, I would equate it to at least 2 to 3 lives of triggering. I know some people might go, oh, really? Yeah, really. That's how many triggers there are. Because you're going to go through years and years of triggers. It's not just 6 months, it's not 3 months, it's years, and it's one after the other. But it is absolutely essential. And please remember, I've heard so many people say, I didn't choose this. You did. You chose it. I will do another podcast explaining more. If people want to know about that, you can leave a comment or you can email me at starkrealitypodcast at gmail.com. If you want me to elaborate on that, we did choose this. We did choose this with our twin. And on that, they get triggered too. I've heard a lot of twins, my twin is not doing the work. Why aren't they doing the work? They are doing the work. I will make a separate podcast on the runner twin flame. They have to do, listen carefully, they have to do every single trigger that you work through. They have to do. They have to. They don't get out of it because they do the avoidance thing. They have to do it. So, if you're looking at stuff where they're partying and having fun and you're like, oh, they're not doing the work, they have to eventually, and the universe will kick their ass. They have to do it. Because how many times on the journey has the triggering become so much that you've just gone, F this, I'm not doing this anymore, and you just completely shut off? What happens? The universe comes and kicks you up the fucking ass. That's what happened with me. Every time I went, not doing this anymore, it's like the universe is like this, like the biggest, baddest bouncer you could even imagine. And it's like it comes up behind you and goes, excuse me, you asked for this and you have to do this. And they basically just push you in the pool again. You've gotten out, they've pushed you back in. So don't think that shit just happens with you. It happens with them as well. You just don't know about it. So they have to work through every single trigger that you work through. They just work through it differently. You are, well, most of the people listening, I would assume, are chaser twins. You are the 5D leader twin. They are the 3D matrix twin. You are yin and you are yang. And because you are opposite, because one of you is feminine energy and one of you is masculine energy, that's not gender, that's energy. Females can have more masculine energy, males can have more feminine energy. Because you are polar opposites, because you are 5D and they are 3D, they learn lessons in a completely different format. Think about it like being in a classroom. You've got, I don't know, you've got a calculus class and you've got another calculus class across the room. You're learning the same stuff, but you've got different teachers. Different teachers teach in different ways according to how the students can learn, or they should. So that's what happens. They don't learn the same as you learn. They're not triggered the same way as you're triggered. So if you're looking for, oh, is my twin triggered? What's the no? It is completely different and it is beyond understanding. Only they understand it on a soul level. We don't understand it because that's not our learning process. So when we look at them, they are triggered. They are on the ascension journey with us. They just learn lessons in a completely different format to the way that we do. How do we get through the worst triggers? Because triggers are on different levels. You'll get really bad ones and you'll get ones that kind of come and they go and it's not really that bad. The bad ones are what I'm talking about, and they could be a lot or they could be a few. It just depends on where you are in the learning process. So from my experience, having gone through the bad triggers, it's difficult to find a remedy to help. I know there's a lot of YouTube videos where people go, do this and do that and do this. Everybody's very, very individualized. Sometimes meditation is not going to work for me, but it'll work for you. Sometimes long walks on the beach is going to work for me, but it's not going to work for you. You have to tailor how to get through the triggers based upon what works for you and what has worked for you, what calms you down. Some people use mindfulness. Some people use breathing exercises. Some people listen to classical music. Some people listen to pop music, happy music. Some people like to go on a hike. They like to go for a swim. You know what I mean? So telling you these are the techniques that you can use, everybody's so individualized in what works for them. Whatever, now I'm assuming you've gone through stress in your life. Whatever you have done in the past to de-stress yourself, and I'm talking positively, naturally, I'm not talking about drugs, alcohol, or any, that's avoidance. I'm talking about something that will help you emotionally get through it. Maybe it's a friend, talking through it with people that understand. Don't talk to people that will dismiss this, because that's even worse. Just go back and think, okay, what is going to be helpful to me? And if you don't know the answer to that, try different things, because you have to go through the triggers. The way that I get through the triggers is probably not the way 99% of people do it. If I'm triggered and I know I'm triggered, I literally sit in the muck. I sit in the mud. I sit in the dirt. I sit in the shit and I wait for it to pass. Literally, I sit there and I'll either cry, I'll get angry, I lock myself away, I don't talk to anybody, and I stare at the wall. That's how I process. That's how I get through it. That is not how a lot of other people get through it. They need to talk to someone. They need a shoulder to cry on. They need to go for walks. They need to do this. They need to watch a comedy movie. That's not how I do it. I sit down, I lock myself away, I hide until I've worked through the trigger, until it's released, and then I get back to the world. For me, that's the fastest way I can work through triggers. For you, it may not be. So really sit down and think, when you're triggered, what is going to alleviate this? For me, I don't use anything to alleviate my pain and suffering. Like I said, I sit in it. I feel it all. I let it consume me, because I feel like that is the fastest way to move through it. Like I said before, a lot of people don't like doing that because it's just, I mean, it's messed up. It feels messed up if you don't have something to alleviate the emotional shit that you're going through. You can't alleviate it so much that you don't feel it because you are going through a trigger, but there are ways. But whatever way you de-stress, maybe you go to a day spa, maybe you go to a friend's house and go for a swim, maybe you go for a sunbake, something, anything natural that's not avoidance, that just makes you feel good. Go for a massage, something to get you out of the emotional distress. Now you're still going through it. It's just it's taking your mind off it, but not in an avoidance kind of way. Avoidance of triggers is interesting because I did that at the beginning because nobody wants to be triggered, and I didn't understand the triggering process. I didn't understand I was on an ascension journey. So I avoided. I was like, oh, why am I being triggered so much? Why am I getting angry so much? I avoided. And the person that triggered me the most was my twin. And you know what? That's exactly how it is supposed to be. Because you trigger the shit out of them and they trigger the shit out of you. That's the whole point. You mirror each other. You're supposed to trigger the shit out of each other. But I sat here when I didn't know what was going on, when I didn't have the experience I have now, and I went, well, if I just don't look at their social media, then I'm not going to get triggered. I'll just do that then. And I know a lot of people do that. They go, well, I'm just going to get it. They either block them, they unfollow them, they don't want anything to do with their social media because it makes them feel shit. Let me tell you something. That doesn't work because you have to get triggered, and the universe will find ways to trigger you through people, through places, through objects, through strangers. They will find a way to trigger you. It doesn't matter if you see your twin, if you don't see your twin, if you're on their social media, if you're not on their social media. The universe finds a way because let me tell you something, the universe is smarter than you. It will find a way to trigger you because you're on this journey for a reason. One of the triggers, I'm going to give you an example of how the universe triggered me. So I was out with one of my friends and he knew about my twin journey, but he didn't know all the information because I remember I started, and this will happen too, you'll start to tell people about the twin journey and they'll look at you like you're a fucking nut job. And so I told him a little bit, but I didn't tell him everything because I was like, oh, he's not getting it. I'm not going to elaborate. So anyway, we were out one day having lunch. And he goes, he knew who my twin was. He goes, I saw this about your twin. And I went, and I instantly felt the blood drain from my brain. And I went, oh God. And it was just, when you get triggered badly, you have somewhat of a panic attack / an anxiety attack. The really harsh triggers, you will get anxiety and it will pulsate through your entire body and it doesn't feel nice. And when he said what he said, I ripped into him and he stood there like a deer in the headlights going, what did I do? And I said, why did you tell me that? Blah, 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 blah. And legitimately, he just went, oh, I didn't think... I'm sorry. I won't do that again. I just didn't think that it was that telling you that was going to be a problem. So innocently, didn't do it to annoy me, didn't do it to trigger me, but that's what I mean. The universe is going to find ways. Once you get more and more healed, the triggers less and 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 more far apart. That's how you know that you are healing and heightening your vibration when the triggers are less severe and they're further apart. You're going to be triggered up until you get into union with your twin. The triggering doesn't end until that happens. The runner and the chaser phase ends, which I spoke about in my previous video, but the triggering doesn't end. It just gets further apart and it gets less and less. So that's just one example of how the universe will use people to trigger you. The soulmate thing, I mean, that's how you can tell the difference. When you're with a soulmate and you're off their social media, you will still have feelings for them, obviously, if you don't look at their social media, but you won't get triggered. Like, the universe is not going to go out of its way to trigger you about this specific person, and the feelings fade. With a twin thing, the feelings don't fade, and the universe will constantly bombard you with triggers. That's how you know you're on the twin journey, because the triggers don't stop. Even if you're like, you know what, this person is toxic, I'm walking away, I deserve better. Usually the universe would have your back and be like, yeah, you know what, you do deserve better than this toxic person. Cut ties with them, let's move forward. And you will. But with a twin, you can't. So you know, if you get consistently triggered, even after you don't have anything to do with them, I mean, not always, but most likely, it's a twin journey. So just wrapping up this podcast, if you have any questions, if you want me to talk about any specific trigger, anything on the twin journey, you can email me at starkrealitypodcast@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can drop a comment below. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helped you, or at least gave you clarity on what the triggers are, where they come from, and why they're so essential to the journey. So thank you very, very much for listening, and I'll see you soon. Stark Reality is a Balloon Head Productions presentation.